Today we are diving into one of the most fascinating experiments in human history, a man who is literally trying to hack death itself. Bryan Johnson is doing things that sound absolutely insane at first, breaking his own legs, exchanging blood with his teenage son, spending millions on unproven therapies. You might be thinking, this guy has completely lost it. But here's what's incredible. When you look closely at the science behind what he is doing, a surprising amount of it actually makes sense. Let's break down this wild journey and see what's really going on. It all started with something surprisingly logical, building a proper foundation. Just like you wouldn't build a house starting with the roof, Bryan didn't jump straight into the crazy stuff. Instead, he assembled a team of 30 doctors and started with the fundamentals of human health. But here's where he did something different. Instead of just following standard health advice, his team dug deep into scientific research to answer basic questions. What exact combinations of food maximize longevity? What specific types and timing of exercise produce the best results? How can sleep be optimized down to the minute? This wasn't just random experimentation. For every single change, no matter how small, they found actual peer-reviewed studies showing specific benefits. Then they test these changes on Bryan while monitoring hundreds of biomarkers to see exactly what happened. It was like turning his body into the world's most sophisticated testing laboratory. But this was just a beginning. Once they had the basics dialed in, Bryan and his team did something unprecedented. They analyzed every single scientific paper about extending lifespan, whether it was done on humans or mice. Think about that scale for a minute. They weren't just looking for obvious stuff. They dug into obscure research papers, experimental treatments, everything. Then they ranked all these potential interventions based on three crucial factors. How strong was the evidence that it actually worked? Could they implement it without unacceptable risks? The ability to extend life. This is where Bryan's approach gets really fascinating. When you are using your own body as a laboratory, mistakes can be fatal. So he developed one of the most sophisticated monitoring systems ever created for a single human being. Daily blood analysis, hundreds of biomarkers tracked continuously, special high frequency testing for new interventions, immediate alerts for any concerning changes, regular full body MRI scans, brain and organ function monitoring, metabolic testing and analysis. Every new intervention gets intense scrutiny. Let's look at how this works in practice. Take rapamycin for example, a drug that in preclinical trials dramatically extended the lifespans of mice by inhibiting the MTOR pathways. However, its mechanism comes with a significant caveat. Rapamycin suppresses the immune system, a feature that makes it indispensable for preventing organ rejection in transplant patients, but also raises serious concerns when applied to healthy individuals. Bryan approached rapamycin like a careful engineer rather than a reckless experimenter. His protocol was meticulous, frequent blood testing. Every 2 hours after dosing, blood tests were performed to monitor immediate changes in immune cell counts. Continuous immune monitoring, constant tracking ensured that even subtle shifts in immune function could be detected and analyzed in real time. Yet, despite these rigorous safeguards, the outcome was sobering. Over nearly 5 years of experimenting with various dosing schedules, Bryan's detailed biomarker analysis revealed that while there was an expected temporary dip in immune cell counts, the downstream benefits, such as enhanced autophagy and improved cellular repair, were disappointingly minimal. Instead, he encountered a host of side effects, including skin and soft tissue infections, abnormal lipid levels, elevated blood sugar, and a higher resting heart rate. Ultimately, these findings led Bryan to a crucial conclusion. The potential longevity benefits of rapamycin did not justify the significant risks and side effects he observed in his human trials. This realization prompted him to discontinue the drug, highlighting a key lesson in longevity research. The promising results seen in animal models do not always translate into meaningful benefits for human health. Remember that blood exchange I mentioned earlier? That came from studies showing younger blood could rejuvenate older organs in mice. Instead of dismissing it as too extreme, Bryan designed a careful protocol to test plasma exchange between himself, his father, and his son. This experiment sparked intense ethical debates in the scientific community. Here's why people were concerned. First, there's the question of informed consent. Even though his son is technically old enough to agree, he is 17, critics argue that having your father, who is also your provider and a public figure, ask for your blood creates an awkward power dynamic. Can a teenager really say no in that situation? Then there's the broader ethical question about using young people's biological resources to extend older people's lives. Some scientists pointed out this could lead down a dangerous path. Imagine a world where wealthy and elderly people routinely use younger people's blood to stay young. It sounds like a sci fi dystopia, right? But Bryan's defense is interesting. He argues that everything was done with full medical supervision. His son was enthusiastic about participating. The amount of plasma exchanged was carefully calculated to be safe. Both he and his son were extensively monitored before, during, and after. The protocol was designed to benefit everyone involved, including his son. He also makes a compelling point about families making medical decisions together. After all, parents donate organs to children and vice versa. How different is this really? The controversy got even more complex when Bryan's father joined the experiment. Now you had three generations involved: grandfather, father, and son, all exchanging plasma in carefully measured amounts. While this provided fascinating data about how plasma exchange affects different age groups, it also raised questions about the boundaries between scientific research and family relationships. Some ethicists argue this crosses a line because it turns family bonds into biological resources. Others say it's actually beautiful, a family working together to help each other live longer and healthier lives. What makes this particularly fascinating is how it highlights a broader question in longevity research. At what point does the pursuit of a longer life start to conflict with other ethical values? Bryan's approach seemed to be that as long as everything is done safely and with consent, extending human life is worth pushing these boundaries. The result: after several meticulously monitored plasma exchange sessions, the data was nothing short of astonishing. Bryan's rigorous protocol, which involved tracking hundreds of biomarkers in real time, revealed that the older generation, particularly his father, experienced significant improvements in key health indicators. In his father's case, markers of cellular regeneration and metabolic efficiency improved notably, while inflammatory biomarkers dropped by nearly 20%. This suggested that the introduction of younger plasma wasn't just a theoretical exercise, it was producing measurable, rejuvenating effects. Meanwhile, Bryan himself saw subtle yet positive shifts in his own biomarkers, reinforcing the idea that even incremental changes can accumulate to create a healthier, more resilient system. And the 17-year-old patient, his robust health metrics remained steady, underscoring that the procedure, when done with careful oversight, was safe across different age groups. In essence, the plasma study offered a tantalizing glimpse into the potential of harnessing intergenerational biological exchanges to slow or even partially reverse aspects of aging. It wasn't just about the numbers, it was a profound demonstration of how, when executed with precision and transparency, experimental therapies can blur the lines between science and family. But Bryan wasn't one to rest on a single breakthrough. With the plasma studies encouraging insights still resonating, he turned his gaze toward an even more audacious frontier, the very blueprint of life itself, the gene therapy. This next chapter in Bryan Johnson's quest for immortality takes us into territory that blurs the line between science fiction and reality: genetic modification of a living human being at the cost of over $1 million. In part 2, we will explore this remarkable gene therapy experiment in detail, along with Bryan's shocking decision to deliberately break his own legs and the philosophical framework he's developed to guide his entire approach, what he calls his core algorithm for extending human life. If you have found the experiments we have covered so far fascinating, what comes next will challenge your conception of what's possible in the pursuit of longevity. Join me in part 2 as we continue unveiling the methods, motivations, and results of one of the most extreme human experiments in modern history. Thank you for watching part 1 of How Bryan Johnson is using an algorithm to live forever. Part 2 will be available next week, so stay tuned for that. Press the subscribe button and the bell icon so that you can be notified when the part 2 is live. See you in part 2.